It was an autumn afternoon in Los Angeles, as the city was experiencing the last hours of a long day, and the sky was turning a warm orange-yellow. The sun was slowly setting behind the skyscrapers, leaving only a soft layer of light covering the wide streets. While most of the city's residents had returned home after a busy day of work, there were still a few people who took the opportunity to go shopping or stroll around. This shopping mall had a large parking lot, and as the daylight gave way to darkness, the parking lot gradually became deserted, with only a few cars remaining in the far corners. Robert Redford, the famous movie star, had just finished a day of filming and was driving through the bustling streets of Los Angeles. He felt the need for some alone time to relax, away from the spotlights and camera lenses. He was wearing only a brown jacket and simple trousers. After deciding to stop at the shopping mall, he parked near the back area, where there was less traffic. Although a light rain had begun to fall, the air was still pleasant. Robert rolled down the car window a little, allowing him to feel the gentle breeze caressing his face. He felt a rare sense of peace amidst the busy life he always faced. At that time, he only thought that he would go in to buy a few things and then quickly leave. But when his eyes accidentally fell on an image in the parking lot, near the end of the parking lot, a man, Frank, was sitting quietly in a hidden corner. The dim light of the street lamp shone down, making the man's figure even more lonely and helpless. This man was not an image that Robert often saw on the bustling streets of Los Angeles. He was not dressed in the flashy or luxurious clothes of the others in the area, but in ragged clothes, his shoes worn out of shape. In the old days, Frank was a man of status, a man who strode confidently into rooms where decisions were made and hands were shaken. He had a loving wife, a son who admired him, and friends who cheered him on his successes. But the wealth had also led him down a darker path, where temporary passions and the euphoria of winning overshadowed the true value of life. A harmless pastime became an obsession. Nights at the casino stretched into the morning, and the thrill of the game outweighed the cost of losing. When he ran out of money, he borrowed until he could borrow no more. Frank returned home from a night of heavy losses, his pockets empty and his excuses flimsier than ever. His wife, Clara, waited for him in the dimly lit living room, her face etched with anguish and exhaustion. Clara's words were calm but firm, as she told Frank that she could not bear it any longer. By morning, Clara and their son were gone. Soon after, a notice from the bank arrived, warning that the house they had shared would now be foreclosed on for unpaid debts. The iron gate locked in front of the house, effectively ending any hope Frank had of living. And now, Frank had lost everything. His fortune, his wife's trust, his son's admiration, and finally his home. The man just sat still, his eyes looking far away as if searching for something beyond the world around him. The silence and lethargy in the man's gaze made him feel that something was wrong. Robert stepped out of the car, not rushing like the others, but approaching, deciding to make contact and ask questions. He felt a certain link, as if something was drawing him closer to this homeless man. In the quiet space of the parking lot, between the cars that were turned off and the light rain, this moment became special. Robert did not know that, in just a few minutes, this encounter would not only change the homeless man, but also change himself and the way he looked at life. Robert stepped out of the car, gently closed the door behind him, and stood for a moment, observing the man. His breath mixed with the humid air of the autumn evening, making the space seem quieter than ever. Sporadic raindrops fell to the ground, making a pattering sound like reminders of human loneliness. However, Robert did not feel that cold. He felt something encouraging inside him, making him walk confidently and firmly. As he approached, Robert could see the man more clearly. Contrary to the image of a homeless person often seen, This man did not look destitute, but even very calm and composed. His face did not exude misery but peace, although perhaps his life had tasted suffering that many people could not imagine. His eyes were deep, full of untold stories. His gaze seemed lost in a separate world. Robert felt a strong urge. He couldn't leave, couldn't just ignore it. Like everyone else in this society, who often turned their backs on the suffering of others, thinking it was their own business. He stopped a few steps and then sat down next to the man, creating a space of closeness and comfort. "Hello," Robert said in a warm yet patient voice, as if he wanted to slowly open the door to communication. "Do you need any help?" The man looked up, his eyes meeting Robert's, but there was no surprise or fear. Instead, there was curiosity, as if he couldn't believe that someone like Robert Redford would approach him and want to talk to him. After a moment, he chuckled softly, as if this interaction was something unexpected. "Thank you," he replied, his voice hoarse, but full of gratitude. "I'm fine, just feel tired sometimes." Robert was in no hurry. He understood that sometimes a person does not need material help, but a sincere greeting, someone who sees him in his loneliness. The rain was still falling, but it was no longer cold. It was a gentle exchange between two people from two different worlds, a shared space full of sympathy. "Can you tell me your story?" Robert continued to ask, not to probe or provoke a conversation, but because he wanted to understand. Part of him felt a strange connection between himself and this man. Robert had been through a lot in his life, from the light of fame to the darkness of failure, and now he wanted to use everything he had to share and connect with people that society sometimes forgot. The man sat silently, as if Robert's questions awakened old memories in him. After a while, he began to speak, his voice slow but sure, as if he were opening a door that he had kept locked for years. His story was not one of sadness. Instead, it was one of choices, of dreams that had failed, of struggles with life. He told of a family he had lost, of mistakes he had made, of losses that could not be filled. Robert listened attentively, without interrupting, without judging. He just listened, and in his heart, he felt the strength of this man, even though he had many difficulties. There was no pity, no empty words of encouragement, just understanding and empathy. Robert began to realize that sometimes just a little care, a little time spent with others, could change their lives. "Perhaps," Robert said after hearing his story, "the most important thing is not to let difficult circumstances define you. No matter what the circumstances, we can still make a difference for ourselves, even for others." The man smiled again, his eyes sparkling like a ray of hope that had just been lit in the darkness. "You're right, but sometimes all it takes is someone believing in me to find me again." Robert stood up and looked into the man's eyes again. "I believe you can do it. Remember, no one has to go through life alone." And with a soft smile, he continued walking, filled with emotion. At that moment, he realized that there was no gift more precious than sharing care and kindness among strangers. As Robert began to walk back to his car, a strange feeling rose within him. Even though he had only talked for a moment with the homeless man, he felt like he had learned an important lesson about life. Part of him didn't want to leave without doing something, didn't want to simply leave after listening to the man's story. Perhaps it was a feeling that everyone had at some point when faced with the pain and loneliness of others. A desire to help, to share, to do something meaningful. As he approached the car, Robert stopped, his eyes once again looking at the man. He could see that he was still sitting there, looking out, as if merging into the vast space of the parking lot, where other cars were moving hurriedly. Robert hesitated for a moment, then turned back. He walked slowly as if thinking about a big decision. As he got closer, the man looked up and saw Robert. He seemed surprised when he turned back. "Do you need anything else?" the man asked, his voice a little doubtful. Robert stood there for a moment, breathing lightly, but his eyes were steady. "I want to help you," he said firmly, without hesitation. "But not the way most people do. I want to help you start over. I know life isn't easy, but sometimes all it takes is one more chance. One chance to change everything." The man looked at Robert, his eyes filled with confusion and a little worry. "You don't understand. I've lived through so much, so many failures, so many starts over that never got anywhere. Sometimes I think it's too late for me to change." Robert smiled, his eyes filled with understanding, but also determination. "I certainly can't understand everything you've been through, but I know that life, no matter how difficult, always has a chance. And sometimes, a small chance, someone who believes in you, is all you need to start over." A few seconds later, Robert took a business card from his pocket. He placed it gently in the man's hand. "Here's my number. If you want, I can help you find a job, a place to live, or even just a place to start over. You don't have to do this alone." The man looked at the business card in his hand, his eyes blank, as if trying to read something he had never believed. Part of him wanted to refuse, but there was another feeling, a fragile feeling of hope creeping into him. "So what do you think I can do?" the man asked, his voice weak but less skeptical. "You can do anything you want," Robert replied, his voice soft but full of determination. "I know it's not easy, but starting with believing in yourself is the first step." The man looked silently at the business card in his hand for a long time. Then, with a very slight change in his gaze, he finally raised his head and nodded slightly. "I'll call." Robert smiled, patted the man on the shoulder, and walked back to the car. But before he opened the door, he paused for a moment, looking back one last time. The man was putting the business card in his jacket pocket, as if a part of him was starting to believe that there might be a second chance for his life. Before leaving, Robert thought for a moment and decided to do one more thing. He turned around and went into a nearby store, bought a warm jacket, a new pair of shoes, and a few other necessities. All of them were wrapped in a plastic bag. Then he returned to the parking lot and handed it to the man. "Here's a little gift," Robert said, handing the bag to the man. "It's just a start." The man stared at the bag, a look of emotion crossing his face. He didn't say anything else, just smiled. The first smile Robert had seen since meeting him. After that strange and touching encounter, Robert felt a strange but exciting feeling. He got back into the car, but not in the same mood as when he had arrived. He didn't rush home, but stopped for a moment, looking back at the parking lot where the homeless man was still sitting. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Even though things might not change immediately, there are small moments that we can create to help someone find hope, and that's what matters most. The next day, Robert didn't forget about the man. He started contacting charities and homeless support services in the area. Despite his busy schedule, Robert still found time to look for opportunities to help. He thought of the homeless man he had met and felt like he had taken an important step, even if it was just a small seed. It felt like a part of the change he hoped would happen. But he knew that not all change came quickly, and sometimes it took time. A week later, on a weekend morning, Robert was drinking coffee at a nearby cafe when he received an unexpected call. It was the man from the day before. Although his voice was a little nervous, there was also a hint of excitement. "Hi, it's me," the man's voice said on the phone. "I'm calling to thank you. I found a job, a temporary one, but enough to support myself for a while. Thank you for believing in me." Robert couldn't hide his emotions. He felt his heart tighten with joy. Part of him was proud that the man had the strength to change, but he also felt the quiet truth that it was only the beginning and the road ahead was still full of challenges. "It's a big step," Robert said softly, "but I know you can do it. And remember, if you need anything, I'm here." The call ended, but in Robert's heart, joy and pride lingered. He felt that while life might not be easy, small but meaningful actions could make a profound difference. The man had not only found a temporary job, but was also able to take care of himself and live a more independent life. It was an important step and a testament to the fact that sometimes an unexpected encounter can change a life. This story shows us a new meaning in life, which is not only working to achieve personal success, but also to change and help others. Small but sincere actions can change a person's life, creating a united and loving community. Sometimes, just a word of encouragement, a timely gesture of help can help a person regain hope and continue on the path of life. So, let's together make a change with a simple act of kindness and patience. These actions not only change the lives of others, but also enrich our own lives. What do you think about this story? Please comment and let us know. Thanks for watching the video. Follow us and turn on the notification bell to stay updated and watch more interesting videos.